The champagne bubbled gold in my glass, catching the amber light of the Edison bulbs strung across the ceiling of Meridian Bar. I lifted it toward my reflection in the mirror behind the shelves of top-shelf liquor, my smile wavering between genuine joy and the disbelief that still hadn't quite settled. To Natalie Harper, I whispered to myself, junior architect at Morrison & Webb. The words tasted sweeter than the champagne. 3 years of night classes while working retail, countless portfolio revisions, 17 rejected applications, and finally, someone had seen what I could do. The interview this morning had been perfect. Mr. Morrison himself had walked me out, his hand warm on my shoulder as he promised the formal offer letter would arrive Monday. I should have been celebrating with friends, with family, with anyone but myself. But Sarah was visiting her parents in Boston. My mother lived 2 states away and didn't quite understand why I'd left my perfectly good retail job to chase dreams. And my other college friends had gradually drifted into their own orbits of careers and relationships. And Ryan. Well, Ryan was supposed to be ancient history. The bartender, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, refilled my glass without my asking. "You look like you're celebrating something important," she observed, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who'd heard 1,000 confessions in this exact spot. "New job," I told her, unable to contain my grin. "Dream job, actually. I start Monday." "Congratulations, honey." She slid a small plate of complimentary bruschetta toward me. "On the house. Anyone who smiles like that deserves a little extra celebration." I thanked her and nibbled at the bruschetta, savoring the burst of tomato and basil. Meridian Bar wasn't the kind of place I could usually afford. Exposed brick walls, velvet booths, a clientele dressed in designer labels and expensive watches. But tonight felt like the beginning of something new, something better. I deserved to celebrate somewhere that matched the magnitude of what I'd accomplished. The bar was moderately crowded for a Thursday evening. Business types clustered in the booths, their conversations a low murmur, punctuated by occasional laughter. A couple sat at the far end of the bar, leaning into each other with the easy intimacy of long familiarity. At a corner table, partially obscured by a decorative screen, a man sat alone, his profile sharp against the dim lighting. Something about him caught my attention, though I couldn't say what exactly. The way he held himself, perhaps, with a stillness that suggested coiled energy rather than relaxation. Or the way other patrons seemed to give his corner a wide berth, as if by unspoken agreement. I looked away, focusing on my champagne and the pleasant buzz beginning to warm my veins. 2 glasses on an empty stomach probably weren't my wisest decision, but wisdom seemed overrated tonight. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "How'd it go?" "I got it," I typed back, my fingers clumsy with champagne and excitement. "Celebrating at Meridian Bar. Wish you were here." Her response came immediately. A string of celebration emojis followed by, "So proud of you. Don't drink too much. Call me tomorrow with details." I was composing a reply when a shadow fell across my phone screen. The familiar scent hit me first, cologne that was too strong, too sweet, the smell that used to cling to my clothes and hair until I'd thrown out everything he'd ever touched. "Natalie. Fancy seeing you here." My blood turned to ice. I didn't need to look up to know who stood beside me, but I did anyway, some masochistic part of me needing to confirm what my senses already knew. Ryan looked exactly the same. Dirty blonde hair styled with too much product. Blue eyes that had once seemed charming but now just looked calculating, the slight smirk that I'd mistaken for confidence when we first met. He wore a polo shirt and khakis, the uniform of men who peaked in their college fraternity and never quite moved on. "Ryan." I kept my voice level, neutral, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you doing here?" "Having a drink, same as you." He gestured to the empty stool beside me, and before I could object, he'd claimed it. Too close. He was always too close, invading space, taking liberties that hadn't been granted. This is a nice surprise. I didn't know you frequented places like this. I don't, I wanted to say. I came here specifically because it's nowhere you'd ever be. But I swallowed the words, years of conflict avoidance kicking in despite my champagne courage. I'm celebrating, I said, angling my body away from him. And I was actually just leaving. Celebrating what? He waved to catch the bartender's attention, ordering a whiskey neat with the casual authority of someone who expected to be obeyed. Let me guess. Finally got a real job? The dig was so perfectly Ryan that I almost laughed. He'd spent our entire relationship undermining my ambitions, suggesting architecture was too hard for me, that I should focus on more practical career paths, like his job in pharmaceutical sales, which he treated as though it were a calling rather than cold calling doctors to push overpriced medications. Yes, actually. Morrison and Webb. I start Monday as a junior architect. Something flickered across his face. Not pride or happiness for me, but something darker. Resentment, maybe, or calculation. Well, that's great, Nat. He used the nickname I'd always hated, the one I'd asked him repeatedly not to use. We should toast to that. Hey, he called to the bartender. Another champagne for the lady, the good stuff. We're celebrating. I'm fine, I interjected, but the bartender had already turned away to retrieve a bottle. Really, Ryan, I don't need another drink. Don't be silly. You can't celebrate alone. His hand landed on my knee, and I jerked away instinctively. He noticed, his expression darkening for just a moment before the smile returned. Come on, Nat. No hard feelings, right? We ended things amicably. Amicably. The word was so absurd I nearly choked. There had been nothing amicable about the screaming match in my apartment, his hand leaving a bruise on my wrist when I'd tried to leave. The 3 months of texts and calls and showing up at my work, until I'd finally changed my number and quit that job entirely. The bartender set a fresh champagne flute in front of me, this one filled with something that bubbled more vigorously than what I'd been drinking. Ryan raised his whiskey. To Natalie Harper, architect extraordinaire. I didn't reach for my glass. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to abandon my celebration and flee to the safety of my apartment. But another part of me, the part that had spent too many years backing down from confrontation, refused to let him chase me away from this moment. I really should go, I said, gathering my purse. Early morning tomorrow. One drink, Nat. Don't be rude. His voice carried an edge now, the one I remembered too well. The one that preceded raised voices and slammed doors and accusations that somehow became my fault. The bartender had moved to the other end of the bar, helping the couple who'd been there earlier. The business types in the booths were absorbed in their own conversations. I felt suddenly, acutely alone despite the crowded room. Fine. One drink. I picked up the glass, noting how Ryan's posture relaxed slightly. Then I'm leaving. That's my girl. He clinked his whiskey against my champagne with more force than necessary. I brought the glass to my lips, but something stopped me. A prickling awareness, the sensation of being watched. My gaze traveled across the bar to the corner table, to the man who'd caught my attention earlier. He was looking directly at me, not with the casual interest of bar patrons people-watching, but with focused intensity. Even across the dimly lit space, I could see his eyes were dark, nearly black in the amber light. His expression was unreadable, but something about the set of his jaw, the slight forward lean of his posture, suggested tension. He gave the smallest shake of his head, a warning so subtle I might have imagined it. I lowered my glass without drinking. Ryan's hand clamped around my wrist. What's wrong? I bought you expensive champagne. The least you could do is drink it. I changed my mind. I really need to go. I tried to pull my arm free, but his grip tightened. Not enough to hurt, not yet, but enough to make his point clear. You always do this, Nat. Always so dramatic. It's embarrassing. The man from the corner table stood. He was taller than I'd realized, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders beneath a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. He moved with fluid precision, each step deliberate, commanding attention without demanding it. Ryan noticed him approaching and released my wrist, his expression shifting from anger to uncertainty. The man stopped beside our bar stools, close enough that I caught the scent of expensive cologne, something with notes of cedar and spice that made Ryan's sweet drugstore brand seem juvenile in comparison. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was low, controlled, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe, or somewhere Mediterranean. "No problem at all," Ryan said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "Just having drinks with an old friend." The man's gaze moved to me, and I felt the weight of it, the assessment. "Is that true?" I should have said yes, should have diffused the situation and escaped while I could. But something about his presence, the absolute certainty in his bearing, made me bold. "He's my ex-boyfriend. I was leaving." "She's being dramatic," Ryan interjected. "We're fine. This doesn't concern you, man." The stranger's attention shifted back to Ryan, and I saw my ex-boyfriend actually flinch. Whatever he saw in those dark eyes made him shrink back slightly on his stool. "I saw you pour something into her drink." The words were stated as fact, not accusation. "Empty your pockets." Ryan's face flushed red. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is harassment. I'll call the police." "Please do." The man gestured toward the door, where I now noticed 2 other men had positioned themselves. Both were large, imposing, with the bearing of professional security. "I'm certain they'd be very interested in what's in your right pocket." The color drained from Ryan's face. "Look, I don't want any trouble." "Then empty your pockets." For a long moment, Ryan seemed to consider refusing. Then he reached into his right pocket and withdrew a small plastic bag containing 2 white pills. My stomach lurched. The champagne I'd drunk threatened to come back up. He'd drugged my drink. Ryan, the man I'd dated for 2 years, who'd told me he loved me, who'd promised to change after each screaming match, had just tried to drug me. These aren't. Ryan stammered, but the stranger raised a hand, silencing him. "Bartender." The woman appeared immediately, and I realized she'd been watching the entire exchange. "Call the police, and bring me that champagne glass." She complied without question, placing the glass carefully on the bar with a napkin, preserving whatever evidence it might contain. The stranger turned to Ryan, and when he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You're going to drink that." "What? No, I'm not." "You're going to drink every drop of what you intended for this young woman, or my associates at the door will ensure you leave this establishment in a condition that requires medical attention. Your choice." Ryan looked at the 2 men by the door, then back at the stranger, then at me. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of options. Finally, his shoulders slumped. "It's not even that much," he muttered, reaching for the glass. "It would just have made her relaxed. More fun." The words made my skin crawl. How many times had he done this? To me? To others? "Drink it," the stranger repeated, his voice hardening. Ryan lifted the glass with shaking hands and drained it in 3 long swallows. The stranger nodded to his associates, and they moved to flank Ryan, each taking an arm. "The police will meet you outside. I suggest you cooperate fully." As they escorted a protesting Ryan toward the exit, the stranger finally turned his full attention to me. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd initially thought, perhaps early 30s. His face was all sharp angles and strong lines, saved from severity by surprisingly full lips and thick lashes that any woman would envy. "Are you all right?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Now that the adrenaline was fading, shock was setting in. My hands trembled as I set down my purse. Did you drink any of it? No. I saw you shake your head. I don't know why I listened, but I did. Something like approval flickered in his dark eyes. Good instincts. He gestured to the bartender. Water, please. And perhaps some food. The bartender brought both immediately, along with a shot of whiskey that she set in front of me. On the house, honey. For the shock. I drank the water first, the cold liquid helping to settle my churning stomach. The whiskey followed, burning pleasantly down my throat. Thank you, I said to the stranger. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You don't need to thank me. He took the stool Ryan had vacated, maintaining a respectful distance. I'm Nathan Cross. Natalie Harper. I extended my hand automatically, and his closed around it. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle for such a large man. Natalie. He said my name like he was testing it, seeing how it felt. Were you celebrating something when he interrupted? New job. I start Monday at Morrison & Webb. The words felt hollow now, the joy of earlier completely drained away. Architecture firm, prestigious. He signaled the bartender for 2 glasses of wine, something that looked expensive. When they arrived, he slid one toward me. Then we should toast properly, to new beginnings. I hesitated, eyeing the glass suspiciously after what had just happened. Nathan seemed to understand. He switched our glasses, taking the one he'd given me and offering his own. I promise this one is safe. The gesture, the understanding behind it, loosened something in my chest. I accepted the glass and raised it toward his. To new beginnings, I echoed. We drank, and the wine was indeed expensive, smooth and complex in ways I didn't have the vocabulary to describe. Outside, I could hear sirens approaching. They'll want your statement, Nathan said. I've already given mine to the responding officers. I saw everything from my table. Why were you watching me? He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wineglass. Your ex-boyfriend. I recognized the pattern, the way he approached, the body language, the hand on your knee when you clearly didn't want it. I've seen it before. And you just help random women in bars? When necessary. His gaze met mine, and I saw something there. Some old pain carefully buried. Not everyone has someone to protect them. Before I could ask what he meant, a police officer entered the bar, her expression professional as she approached us. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and questions, evidence bags and sympathetic looks. Nathan remained beside me throughout, a solid, steady presence that kept me grounded when the reality of what had almost happened threatened to overwhelm me. By the time the police finally left with Ryan in custody and my statement recorded, I was exhausted. The celebration I'd planned seemed like it had happened days ago rather than hours. Let me take you home, Nathan said as I gathered my things. My driver is outside. That's not necessary. I can catch a cab. I'm sure you can, but I'd feel better knowing you arrived safely. I should have refused, should have maintained some semblance of independence and self-sufficiency. But the thought of being alone right now, of sitting in a cab with a stranger after what had almost happened, made my throat tight. Okay. Thank you. The car waiting outside was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. The driver, a large man with graying temples, held the door open for us with a deferential nod toward Nathan. As we pulled away from Meridian Bar, I leaned my head against the cool window and closed my eyes. Today was supposed to have been perfect, the best day of my life. Instead, it had become something else entirely, a reminder that the past never stayed buried as deeply as you hoped, and an introduction to a man who'd saved me from something terrible, but who carried his own shadows in those dark, watchful eyes. The drive through the city passed in silence. I watched the familiar streets blur past, neon signs and streetlights creating streaks of color against the night. Nathan sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, but far enough to respect my space. He hadn't asked for my address, I realized. Just told his driver to go, and the man had simply nodded and pulled away from the curb. "Where are we going?" I asked, straightening in my seat. "My building. It's secure, and you'll be safe there while we figure out next steps." Alarm bells rang in my head, cutting through the fog of shock and exhaustion. "Next steps? I appreciate what you did, but I'm going home. To my apartment." Nathan turned to face me fully, his expression serious. "Natalie, your ex-boyfriend just attempted to drug you in a public place. He knows where you live, doesn't he?" The question landed like a punch to the gut. Of course Ryan knew where I lived. He'd shown up there countless times during those 3 months after we'd broken up, leaving flowers and apology notes that gradually became accusations and threats. I'd gotten a restraining order eventually, but paper barriers meant nothing to men like Ryan. "Yes, but he's been arrested. He can't—" "He'll make bail by morning," Nathan interrupted gently. "Men like him always do. And when he does, where do you think he'll go first?" My hands clenched in my lap. I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle this myself, that I didn't need some stranger's protection no matter how timely his intervention had been. But the memory of Ryan's hand tightening on my wrist, the casual way he'd dropped those pills into my drink, the 3 months of harassment I'd already endured, all of it crashed over me at once. "I can't just hide," I said, my voice smaller than I'd intended. "I start my new job Monday. I have a life. And you'll return to that life. But tonight, you need to be somewhere he can't reach you." Nathan's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to trust me blindly, Natalie. I'm asking you to accept protection for one night while we ensure your safety." The car turned into an underground parking garage beneath a building I recognized from the skyline, one of the new luxury high-rises in the financial district. The driver pulled into a private bay marked with Nathan's name, and I noticed security cameras positioned at multiple angles, guards stationed at the elevator bay. "You live here?" I asked, taking in the obvious wealth and security. "I own the building. It has certain advantages." The elevator required a key card and thumbprint to access the penthouse level. As we rose smoothly upward, I caught Nathan watching my reflection in the polished doors. "You're wondering what kind of man can afford this," he observed, "among other things." A slight smile touched his lips, the first real expression I'd seen from him beyond controlled intensity. "I'm a businessman. Import-export primarily. Some real estate holdings. Nothing particularly interesting." The vagueness of his answer told me more than details would have. Men who were just businessmen didn't move like Nathan did, with that coiled readiness. They didn't have drivers who looked like security professionals, or the kind of authority that made people obey without question. But he'd saved me. Whatever else he was, he'd stepped in when no one else had noticed or cared that I was in danger. The elevator opened directly into a sprawling penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, offering a view that probably cost more per month than I made in a year. The decor was minimalist, but clearly expensive. Dark leather furniture, abstract art that looked original, a kitchen with appliances I'd only seen in design magazines. "The guest suite is through there," Nathan said, gesturing to a hallway. "It has its own bathroom and a lock on the door. You're welcome to use it tonight, tomorrow, however long you need." I turned to face him, suddenly aware that we were alone in his apartment, that I'd gotten into a car with a man I'd met less than 2 hours ago. Sarah would kill me if she knew. My mother would have a heart attack. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Really?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant, as if looking at something far beyond the windows. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that spoke of old grief. "I had a sister, younger than me by 5 years, Elena. He moved to the windows, his hands sliding into his pockets. She fell in love with the wrong man when she was 23. He seemed charming at first, attentive, then controlling, then violent. My breath caught. I didn't need to hear the rest of the story to know where it was going. She tried to leave him several times, Nathan continued. Each time he'd apologize, promise to change, and she'd believe him. Until the night she tried to leave for good. His jaw tightened, muscles working beneath his skin. She made it as far as a hotel room before he found her. The coroner said she fought back. It didn't matter. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I wasn't there. He cut me off, his voice rough with self-recrimination. I was building my business, too focused on deals and profits to notice my sister was dying slowly in front of me. By the time I understood, it was too late. He turned back to me, and in his eyes I saw the truth of what he'd said earlier. Not everyone has someone to protect them. Elena hadn't, and he'd been carrying that guilt ever since. So when I see a man drugging a woman's drink, when I see her trying to leave and him forcing her to stay, I don't look away. I can't. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I couldn't save Elena, but I can save you. The raw honesty in his confession stole my words. This wasn't a stranger offering help out of abstract goodwill. This was a man trying to atone for a sister he'd lost, to fill a hole in his soul by protecting someone else's sister, someone else's daughter. Okay, I said finally. One night, and then we figure out a real plan. Relief flickered across Nathan's features. Thank you for trusting me enough to stay. He showed me to the guest suite, which was larger than my entire apartment. The bed was king-sized with crisp white linens, the bathroom marble and chrome with a rainfall shower and a tub deep enough to swim in. Fresh toiletries were arranged on the counter, and when I opened the closet, I found it stocked with basics, pajamas, loungewear, all in neutral sizes. For guests, Nathan explained, seeing my surprise. There should be something that fits. After he left, closing the door behind him, I engaged the lock and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to process everything that had happened. The joy of my new job felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. In its place was a tangle of fear, gratitude, and confusion about the man who'd appointed himself my protector. I showered, letting the hot water wash away the feel of Ryan's hand on my knee, the sick realization of what he'd intended. The pajamas fit reasonably well, soft cotton pants and a matching top. When I emerged, I found a tray outside my door with tea, crackers, and cheese, along with a note in bold handwriting. In case you're hungry, rest well. N. The gesture was thoughtful, domestic in a way that seemed at odds with everything else about Nathan Cross. I brought the tray inside and curled up on the bed, nibbling crackers I didn't really want while my mind raced. My phone buzzed. Sarah, checking in. How's the celebration going? Don't do anything I wouldn't do. I stared at the message, trying to decide how much to tell her. Everything felt too complicated, too surreal to sum up in a text. Finally, I typed, "Long story. We'll call tomorrow. I'm safe." Her response came immediately. Safe? That's an odd word choice. Call me first thing. I promised I would and set my phone aside. Through the windows of the guest suite, I could see a sliver of the city stretched out below, lights twinkling like fallen stars. Somewhere out there, Ryan was being processed, photographed, fingerprinted. Tomorrow he'd make bail, just as Nathan had predicted. And then what? Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion eventually pulled me under. My dreams were fractured, confusing. Ryan's hand on my wrist, Nathan's dark eyes full of old pain. Elena's face that I'd never seen but imagined anyway, pleading for help that came too late. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The bar, Ryan, Nathan, this sanctuary high above the city. When I ventured out of the guest suite, I found Nathan in the kitchen, dressed in dark slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up from his phone as I approached. "Coffee?" He gestured to a French press on the counter. "Or there's tea if you prefer." "Coffee, please." I accepted the mug he poured, adding cream from the pitcher he slid toward me. "Thank you. For last night. For all of this." "You're welcome." He leaned against the counter, studying me with those assessing eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, like I'm in a strange dream." I wrapped both hands around the warm mug. Yesterday morning I was celebrating the best news of my life. Now I'm hiding in a penthouse from my ex-boyfriend who tried to drug me, being protected by a man I just met. "A man who wants to help," Nathan corrected gently. "I've already made some calls this morning. Ryan made bail an hour ago, but there's a judge friendly to my family who agreed to issue an extended restraining order with some teeth. If he comes within 500 feet of you, he goes back to jail immediately. No bail." I stared at him. "How did you... What family connections?" "I told you. I'm in business. That creates certain relationships." He said it casually, but I heard the careful vagueness again. "Your apartment building also needs better security. I've arranged for cameras to be installed and a doorman for the entrance." "Nathan, I can't afford..." "You're not paying for it. I am." He held up a hand before I could protest. "Consider it a personal investment in ensuring you're safe. Ryan won't be the only man who might pose a threat, and that building has too many vulnerabilities." The implication in his words chilled me. "What do you mean, won't be the only man?" Nathan set down his coffee cup, his expression growing serious. "Men like your ex-boyfriend often have friends with similar proclivities. They share information, techniques. Once Ryan is convicted, and he will be, I'll make certain of that. Some of his associates might take interest in the woman who put him away." My stomach dropped. "You're saying I'll need protection indefinitely?" "I'm saying you need to be aware of the reality." He moved closer, his presence somehow both comforting and overwhelming. "But you won't face it alone, Natalie. I meant what I said last night. I'll ensure you're safe." "Why?" The question burst out of me. "I understand about your sister, about wanting to help. But it's too much. You don't know me." "No," he agreed. "But I know men like Ryan. I know what they're capable of. And I know I have the resources to stop them." Something fierce entered his eyes. "After Elena, I made a vow. Any woman I encounter who's being threatened, harmed, or trapped, I help. No exceptions. No half measures." "That must be expensive," I said, trying for levity despite the intensity of his gaze. "I can afford it." The corner of his mouth lifted. "And you're worth it, Natalie Harper. Anyone strong enough to walk away from an abuser, to rebuild her life and chase her dreams despite everything, that person deserves protection." His words settled something inside me, some knot of shame I'd been carrying since leaving Ryan. The voice that whispered I should have known better, should have seen the signs sooner, should have been strong enough to leave the first time he'd grabbed my wrist too hard. "I start my new job Monday," I said. "I can't hide forever." "You won't hide. You'll live your life, pursue your career, build the future you deserve." Nathan's voice was absolute, allowing no argument. "With security watching over you, my people are professionals, former military and law enforcement. They'll be invisible until needed." The matter-of-fact way he described arranging my life should have alarmed me. But after months of struggling alone, of looking over my shoulder and jumping at shadows, the promise of genuine protection was seductive. "How long would this arrangement last?" I asked, Until you're safe. Until Ryan and anyone associated with him understands that touching you means facing consequences they can't afford. His jaw set. However long that takes. My phone buzzed, Sarah calling. I glanced at Nathan apologetically. "Take it," he said, giving me privacy by moving to the windows. "Natalie, what the hell is going on? Your text last night freaked me out." I gave her the abbreviated version. The bar, Ryan, the attempted drugging, Nathan's intervention. I left out the part about staying in Nathan's penthouse, knowing that would require explanations I didn't have energy for yet. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed when I finished. "Are you okay? Where are you now?" "I'm safe. Somewhere Ryan can't reach me." "With that Nathan guy?" "Natalie, please tell me you didn't go home with a strange man." "It's complicated. But I trust him, Sarah. He saved me." "Just because someone does one good thing doesn't mean—" She sighed heavily. "Promise me you'll be careful. And call if you need anything. I can catch a flight back today if you need me." "I'm okay, really." The lie felt necessary. A way to keep her from worrying. "I'll call you later." After we hung up, Nathan returned to the kitchen. "Your friend sounds protective." "She is. We've known each other since college." I hesitated. "She's worried about you, about this situation." "Smart woman. You should be wary of strangers offering help." He poured himself more coffee. "But I hope you'll trust that my intentions are exactly what I've said. To keep you safe, nothing more." "What about your business? Don't you have somewhere to be?" "I work from here often, and what I can't handle remotely, my associates manage." He checked his watch. "But I do have a meeting this afternoon. Would you be comfortable here alone? The building is secure, and I'll leave my number if you need anything." The thought of being alone should have brought relief, time to process, to think without Nathan's intense presence. Instead, I felt a flutter of anxiety at his absence. "I'll be fine," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. Nathan studied me as if reading the truth beneath my words. "My housekeeper will be here in an hour to stock the kitchen and change the linens. Maria, she's been with me for years, completely trustworthy, and Dimitri will be in the lobby. He's the one who drove us last night." The level of organization, the ease with which he arranged protection, spoke to resources far beyond normal business success. But I was too grateful to question it deeply. The rest of the morning passed in strange domesticity. Nathan worked at the dining table on his laptop while I browsed my phone, pretending to catch up on emails while actually researching him. Nathan Cross came up in business articles, society pages, philanthropic endeavors. Everything legitimate and impressive. Nothing that explained the aura of danger that clung to him like expensive cologne. Maria arrived with shopping bags of groceries and a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She spoke with a slight accent, treating me with the casual kindness of someone who'd been instructed to make me comfortable. "Mr. Cross, he is good man," she told me while putting away produce. "He helped many people. You are safe here, Miss Natalie." The emphasis she placed on safe made me wonder how many others Nathan had protected over the years, how many women he'd installed in this guest suite while they healed or hid. When Nathan left for his meeting, kissing Maria's cheek and promising to return by evening, the penthouse felt larger and emptier. I tried to distract myself with television, with exploring the extensive library in his study, but my mind kept returning to Ryan, to what he'd tried to do, to how close I'd come to being another statistic, another woman who disappeared from a bar and became a warning story. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. "Hello." Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice I knew too well. "You think you're smart, Nat? Getting me arrested? I'm out now. And we're going to have a conversation about respect." My blood turned to ice. "How did you get this number? I have friends. They can find anything, anyone. Ryan's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. That guy at the bar, your protector or whatever? He won't always be around. And when he's not... I ended the call with shaking hands. Immediately I dialed Nathan's number. He answered on the first ring. Natalie? What's wrong? Ryan just called me. He threatened me. The words tumbled out. He said he has friends who can find anyone. A long pause. Then Nathan's voice, colder than I'd heard it. I'm on my way back. Lock yourself in the master bedroom. It has a reinforced door and panic button. Go now. I ran. The master bedroom was even more impressive than the guest suite, all dark wood and masculine elegance with a bed that could sleep four. But I barely noticed the decor as I engaged the lock and pressed my back against the door, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Ryan's voice echoed in my head. We're going to have a conversation about respect. The casual menace in those words was worse than any shouted threat. This was Ryan at his most dangerous. Cold, calculating, convinced of his righteousness. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. 10 minutes. You're safe. Breathe. I tried to follow his instruction, forcing air into my lungs in measured counts. The panic button he'd mentioned was beside the bed, a small red device mounted to the wall. Just seeing it there, proof that Nathan had anticipated danger, made me feel marginally safer. True to his word, Nathan arrived in less than 10 minutes. I heard the elevator, his voice speaking rapidly in what sounded like Italian, then a knock at the bedroom door. Natalie, it's me. You can open up. My hands shook as I disengaged the lock. Nathan stood in the hallway, flanked by two men I hadn't seen before. Both were large, professional-looking, with the same watchful intensity I'd noticed in Dimitri. Come here. Nathan opened his arms, and without thinking, I walked into them. He was solid, warm, his embrace firm but gentle as I pressed my face against his chest. You're safe. I promise you're safe. I stayed there longer than I probably should have, drawing comfort from his presence until my breathing finally steadied. When I pulled back, Nathan's expression was granite. Tell me exactly what he said. I recounted the conversation word for word. Nathan's jaw tightened with each sentence, and by the time I finished, something dangerous had settled in his eyes. Marco, he said to one of the men behind him. Trace the call. I want to know which phone he used and where he was when he made it, and find out who's been giving him information. Marco nodded and disappeared. The other man remained, positioning himself near the elevator with the casual alertness of a trained guard. That's Alessandro, Nathan explained, guiding me back toward the living room. Former Carabinieri, Italian military police. He'll be staying in the building for the foreseeable future. Nathan, this is too much. You can't just... I can, and I will. He sat me down on the leather sofa, then crouched before me so we were eye level. Natalie, listen to me carefully. Your ex-boyfriend is escalating. The fact that he called you hours after making bail, that he already has access to your new number, means he has resources we underestimated. This isn't just an angry ex. This is someone connected. The word connected hung heavy between us, laden with implications I didn't want to examine. Connected how? I asked, though part of me didn't want the answer. Nathan stood, moving to the windows. The afternoon sun cast his profile in sharp relief, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Pharmaceutical sales is a profitable business. It's also one with certain overlap with less legitimate enterprises. My contacts are looking into Ryan's associations now. You think he's involved in drugs? Real drugs, not just what he tried to give me? I think he has friends who are, and those friends don't appreciate women who press charges. Nathan turned back to me, his expression softening. But they also don't mess with anyone under my protection. Once word spreads that you're connected to me, Ryan's friends will back off fast. There was that word again, connected. And the way Nathan said it with such certainty of his own power made me wonder exactly what kind of businessman he was. "Who are you, Nathan?" I asked quietly. "Really?" He studied me for a long moment, as if weighing how much truth I could handle. Finally, he returned to the sofa, sitting close enough that our knees almost touched. "My family came to this country 3 generations ago from Sicily. My grandfather built a legitimate import business, but he also maintained certain traditional relationships, connections that extended beyond legal commerce." Nathan's voice was measured, careful. "By the time my father inherited, most of the business was legitimate. I've continued that trajectory. Everything I do now exists within the law." "But the connections remain," I said, understanding dawning. "The connections remain. They're useful for situations exactly like this, when legal channels move too slowly to ensure someone's safety." His dark eyes met mine. "I won't apologize for using every resource at my disposal to protect you, Natalie, even the ones that exist in gray areas. I should have been frightened. Should have recognized that I'd traded one dangerous man for another, even if Nathan's danger was pointed outward rather than at me. But all I felt was a strange relief that someone with actual power had decided I was worth protecting." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we make sure Ryan and his associates understand that you're untouchable." Nathan pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "Marco's already traced the call. Ryan used a burner phone, but he made it from a bar 3 blocks from your apartment. He's watching your building." Ice flooded my veins. "He's there right now?" "He was. Alessandro's team has been monitoring your building since this morning. Ryan left about 20 minutes ago, but he'll be back." Nathan's smile was cold, predatory. "And when he returns, he'll receive a message he can't ignore." "What kind of message?" "The kind that makes men reconsider their priorities." He stood, offering me his hand. "But you don't need to worry about the details. What you need is to rest, to process everything that's happened. Tomorrow is Saturday. We'll spend the day getting you settled more permanently, ensuring your apartment is secure for when you're ready to return." The casual assumption that I'd be staying longer than one night should have bothered me. Instead, I found myself grateful. The thought of returning to my apartment, knowing Ryan had been lurking outside, made my skin crawl. "I need clothes," I said, practical concerns surfacing. "My things. I can't just live in borrowed pajamas." "I'll send someone to collect whatever you need. Just make a list." "I should go myself. It's my apartment. My life." "Not yet." Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. "Not until we've neutralized the threat. I know you value your independence, Natalie. I respect that. But right now, your independence could get you killed." The blunt words were like a slap, shocking me into acceptance of the reality I'd been avoiding. Ryan wasn't just angry. He was dangerous, with resources and connections that made him more than a simple abusive ex-boyfriend. Maria appeared with lunch, a spread of Italian antipasti, fresh bread and pasta that smelled divine. She fussed over me like a concerned aunt, insisting I eat even though my stomach was in knots. "You must keep your strength," she said, patting my hand. "Mr. Cross, he will handle everything. You just rest and heal." After lunch, exhaustion crashed over me despite it being early afternoon. The adrenaline of the past 24 hours had finally depleted, leaving me hollow and drained. "Sleep," Nathan said, noticing my drooping eyes. "The guest room is yours for as long as you need it." I retreated gratefully, collapsing onto the bed still fully clothed. My last thought before sleep claimed me was how strange it was to feel safe in the home of a man I barely knew, while the man I dated for 2 years had become my worst nightmare. I woke to darkness and voices, Nathan's low murmur, and another man responding in Italian. I checked my phone. 8:47 p.m. I'd slept for nearly 6 hours. When I emerged from the guest suite, I found Nathan in the kitchen with Marco and another man I didn't recognize. All three looked up as I approached, and their conversation immediately ceased. "Good evening," Nathan said, his expression warming. "I was just about to wake you. You've slept through dinner, but Maria left food warming in the oven." "I'm not really hungry." My stomach disagreed with a loud growl, and Nathan's lips twitched. "Clearly. Come, eat. We can talk after." The other men excused themselves, leaving us alone in the kitchen. Nathan served me pasta carbonara that was probably the best thing I'd ever tasted, along with a glass of red wine that he poured with practiced ease. "Any news?" I asked between bites. "Ryan returned to your building at 6 p.m. He waited outside for 40 minutes before Alessandro's team approached him." Nathan swirled his own wine glass, watching the liquid catch the light. "They delivered a message from me. Very clear, very direct. If he comes near you again, his connections won't be enough to protect him." "What exactly did they say?" "That you're under the protection of the Cross family, that any threat to you is a threat to me, and that I take such threats very seriously." His eyes met mine. "Trust me when I say the name Cross carries weight in certain circles. Ryan and his associates will understand the message." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone despite the delicious food. "Nathan, I can't ask you to put yourself at risk for me. If Ryan's friends are as dangerous as you say, they're not as dangerous as I am." He said it simply, stating fact rather than boasting. "Natalie, the kind of men who deal drugs and prey on women operate through fear and intimidation. They're cowards who crumble when confronted by someone who won't be intimidated. Ryan chose the wrong woman to target when he chose you. Because I have you protecting me. Because you're strong enough to walk away from abuse, to build a new life, to stand up in a police station and give testimony despite being terrified." Nathan reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "The protection I offer simply ensures that strength isn't punished." His hand was warm, slightly calloused despite his obvious wealth. I found myself turning my palm up, letting our fingers intertwine. The gesture felt intimate in a way that should have alarmed me, but instead felt right. "Tell me about your sister," I said softly. "Elena. What was she like?" Nathan's expression shifted, grief and affection warring across his features. "She was light. That's the best way to describe her. Always laughing, always seeing the good in people." He smiled sadly. "She wanted to be a teacher, loved children. She would have been brilliant at it." "How old was she when?" 25. 2 years younger than you are now." His grip on my hand tightened slightly. "Her boyfriend was 32, established, charming. Everyone thought she'd done well for herself. We didn't see the bruises she hid. Didn't notice how she stopped calling as often. How her smile never reached her eyes anymore." "It's not your fault," I said, echoing words I'd heard in therapy after leaving Ryan. "Abusers are experts at hiding their abuse. I know that here." He tapped his temple. "But here?" He placed his free hand over his heart. "I still wonder what signs I missed, what I could have done differently. She tried to reach out the week before she died. Left me 3 voicemails I was too busy to return." The raw pain in his voice made my chest ache. "What did they say?" "The first 2 were nothing important, just wanting to catch up. But the third," his jaw clenched. "She said she needed to talk, that she was scared. I told myself I'd call her back after my meeting in Milan. I never got the chance. Without thinking, I stood and moved around the table, wrapping my arms around him from behind." Nathan stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, his hands coming up to cover mine where they rested on his chest. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I'm so sorry you lost her." We stayed like that for a long moment, two people bound by different experiences of the same trauma. Loving someone destroyed by a man who claimed to love them. When I finally pulled back, Nathan stood and turned to face me. We were close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I won't lose anyone else," he said quietly. "Not you. Not to Ryan or anyone like him." The intensity in his gaze made something flutter in my chest, a dangerous warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude. This man had saved me, was protecting me, had shown me more genuine care in 24 hours than Ryan had in 2 years. "I should probably go to bed," I said, my voice not quite steady. "Early start tomorrow if we're securing my apartment." Nathan nodded, stepping back to give me space, but his eyes tracked my movement as I headed toward the guest suite, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. "Natalie," he called as I reached the hallway. I turned. "Yes?" "Thank you. For listening. For asking about Elena." His expression was vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "I don't talk about her often. It helps, having someone who understands." "Anytime," I said, and meant it. Back in the guest suite, I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in my chest. Fear of Ryan? Yes. Gratitude toward Nathan? Absolutely. But underneath those was something else, something more complicated and dangerous. I was starting to care for Nathan Cross as more than just my protector. And given the circumstances, given the man he was and the reasons we'd met, that was the most dangerous thing of all. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Checking in. You okay? Still safe?" "I'm fine," I typed back. "We'll call tomorrow with details, promise." Her response was immediate. "You better. I'm worried about you." I assured her again that I was okay, then set the phone aside and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions about my future and what kind of relationship I could have with the man who'd appointed himself my guardian. Through the walls, I heard Nathan moving around the penthouse, his footsteps purposeful. I wondered if he slept, or if guilt over Elena kept him awake like it had for years. I wondered what it would be like to be the person who could ease that guilt, who could bring light back into the life of a man who existed in shadows. Then I caught myself, recognizing the dangerous territory of those thoughts. Nathan was my protector, nothing more. Confusing gratitude with attraction, safety with affection, would only complicate an already impossible situation. But even as I repeated that to myself, I knew the truth. It was already too late. In less than 2 days, Nathan Cross had become more than my protector. He'd become someone I couldn't imagine living without, and that terrified me more than Ryan ever had. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight flooding the penthouse with golden light. I found Nathan already awake, dressed in jeans and a black sweater that somehow looked as expensive as his suits, sipping espresso while reviewing something on his tablet. "Good morning," he said, looking up with a slight smile. "Sleep well?" "Eventually." I poured myself coffee from the pot he'd already made. "What's the plan for today?" "First, we go to your apartment. My security team has already installed cameras and reinforced the locks, but I want you to make a list of anything you need. We'll have it brought here." "Nathan, I can't stay here indefinitely." "Can't you?" He set down his tablet, giving me his full attention. "Natalie, your lease is month to month. Your landlord has been cited for multiple safety violations. Even without the Ryan situation, that building isn't safe." "It's what I can afford," I said quietly, shame heating my cheeks. "Not all of us own penthouses." His expression softened. "I'm not judging your circumstances. I'm offering an alternative. This building has several vacant units. I own them all. You could have one, proper lease, fair market rate for the neighborhood. which is less than you're paying now for better security and amenities. I'm not a charity case. No. You're a talented architect starting a promising career who deserves to live somewhere that doesn't have broken locks and water damage. Nathan stood, moving to lean against the counter. This isn't charity, Natalie. It's practical. And it ensures you're in a secure building while the Ryan situation resolves itself. The offer was too generous, too convenient. But the thought of returning to my old apartment, knowing Ryan had been lurking outside, made my decision. Okay, I said, but I pay rent. Real rent, not some token amount. Agreed. Nathan extended his hand, and we shook on it like business partners rather than protector and protected. His grip was firm, warm, and lingered a moment longer than necessary. An hour later, we were in the Bentley with Dimitri driving and Alessandro in the passenger seat. My neighborhood looked different somehow. Smaller, shabbier, the flaws more apparent after spending time in Nathan's world of marble and luxury. My apartment building was exactly as I'd left it. 5 floors of aging brick, graffiti on the entrance doors, the security intercom that hadn't worked since I moved in. Alessandro went in first, checking each floor before signaling we could enter. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. The new cameras Nathan had mentioned were visible at each landing, professional installations that looked out of place in the dingy hallways. The new lock on my door required a key card, rather than the old tumbler lock that could be picked by anyone with basic skills. Inside, my apartment felt like a relic of a former life. The second-hand furniture I'd been so proud of finding looked shabby now. The stack of library books on my coffee table, the architectural sketches tacked to my walls, the tiny kitchen where I'd taught myself to cook cheap but nutritious meals. All of it spoke to a life I'd built alone through sheer determination. "Take your time," Nathan said, standing by the door while I moved through the small space. "Whatever you need, we'll bring." I packed methodically. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop and work materials, the few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my mother. Photos went into a separate bag. My parents before the accident. Sarah and me at graduation, my grandmother who'd raised me after they died. Nathan wandered to my wall of sketches, studying them with genuine interest. "These are yours? Practice work, nothing serious." "They're good. This one especially." He pointed to a design for a community center I'd drawn as a class project. "The way you've integrated green space with structural elements, it's innovative." The compliment warmed me more than it should have. "Thank you. That was my thesis project." "Morrison and Webb are lucky to have you." As I packed, my phone rang. An unknown number again. I showed Nathan, who nodded for me to answer and then gestured for silence. "Hello? Natalie Harper?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Yes, who is this?" "Detective Sarah Morrison, Organized Crime Division. I understand you filed charges against Ryan Mitchell for attempted drugging and assault. I'd like to schedule a time to discuss your case and some related matters." I glanced at Nathan, who was already typing on his phone. "Related matters?" "Mr. Mitchell has some interesting associations we're investigating. Your testimony could be valuable to a larger case. Would you be available to come to the station Monday morning?" "I start a new job Monday." "Tuesday, then? This is time-sensitive, Miss Harper." Nathan showed me his phone screen. He'd already pulled up Detective Morrison's information. Legitimate police officer, Organized Crime Division, exactly as she'd claimed. "Tuesday works," I said. "What time?" We arranged the meeting, and when I hung up, Nathan's expression was thoughtful. "This is good," he said. "If the police are building a case against Ryan's associates, it adds another layer of protection for you. They'll be watching him. Or it makes me more of a target. A witness they need to silence. Not with me protecting you." His voice was absolute. Let them try. We finished packing and returned to Nathan's building, where he showed me several available units. I chose one on the 20th floor, not as high as Nathan's penthouse, but with a beautiful view and enough space that I didn't feel like I was living in a shoebox. It was furnished with basic pieces, modern and clean. Nothing like my old secondhand collection, but comfortable enough. "The lease starts Monday," Nathan said as we stood in the empty living room. "Maria will help you get settled. Whatever you need, just ask." "I'll pay first and last month's rent," I insisted, "and I'd like to contribute something toward the security costs." Nathan's lips twitched. "The security is non-negotiable and non-billable, but if it makes you feel better, you can buy me dinner once you've settled." The offer felt like more than just compensation for expenses. It felt like a date, like something that could shift our relationship from protector and protected to something undefined and potentially dangerous. "Deal," I heard myself say. That evening, back in the penthouse, we fell into an easy routine that felt unsettlingly domestic. Nathan worked at the dining table while I reviewed materials for my first day at Morrison & Webb, both of us comfortable in the shared silence. Maria brought dinner, roasted chicken and vegetables that we ate while discussing architecture, business, everything except Ryan and threats, and the complicated situation we found ourselves in. "I need to attend a meeting tomorrow evening," Nathan said as we finished eating. "Business associates, nothing dangerous, but it will keep me out late. Alessandro will stay with you." "I'll be fine alone," I protested. "I can't have a bodyguard forever." "Humor me." His voice softened. "Until after your police interview Tuesday, until we know what Ryan's next move is." I wanted to argue, to insist on my independence, but the memory of Ryan's voice on the phone, the threats he'd made, kept me silent. "Okay," I agreed, "but only until Tuesday." Nathan smiled, and the expression transformed his usually serious face into something dangerously handsome. "We'll see." That night, as I lay in the guest suite listening to Nathan move around the penthouse, I realized that somewhere in the past 48 hours, my life had completely changed. I wasn't the same woman who'd celebrated alone in a bar Thursday night, naive enough to think a job offer was the biggest challenge I'd face. Now I was someone under the protection of a man with connections to worlds I barely understood, someone whose ex-boyfriend had ties to organized crime, someone preparing to testify in a case that could put dangerous people in prison. Tomorrow I would start at Morrison & Webb, would begin building the future I'd dreamed of, but that future now included Nathan Cross, whether I'd planned for it or not. And the terrifying part? I wasn't sure I wanted it any other way. Monday morning arrived with the nervous energy of new beginnings. I stood before the mirror in the guest suite, adjusting my blazer for the 10th time. First day at Morrison & Webb, the dream job I'd worked years to achieve. And all I could think about was whether the security cameras Nathan had installed would catch anyone approaching the building. "You look perfect." Nathan appeared in the doorway, immaculate in a charcoal suit. He'd insisted on driving me himself, a deviation from his usual schedule that I'd stopped protesting. "Ready?" "Terrified," I admitted, smoothing my skirt. "What if they realized they made a mistake hiring me?" "Impossible." His certainty was absolute. "They hired you because you're talented. Now go show them they were right." The Morrison & Webb offices occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. Nathan walked me to the lobby, his hand at the small of my back, a gesture that had become familiar over the past few days. "Alessandro will be nearby," he said quietly. "Dimitri is on standby. You have my number." "I know the protocol." I managed a smile despite my nerves. "I'll be fine, Nathan. It's an architecture firm, not a war zone." Something flickered in his eyes. Concern, maybe. Or the memory of his sister who'd thought she was safe, too. "Text me when you're ready to leave. I'll pick you up." He left, and I rode the elevator to the 15th floor, where Morrison & Webb's reception area gleamed with chrome and glass. The next 8 hours passed in a whirlwind of introductions, IT setup, and orientations. My supervisor, Patricia Chen, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, who'd designed half the city's most iconic buildings. "Your portfolio impressed us," she said, showing me to my desk, an actual desk with a view, not a cubicle. "Mr. Morrison specifically requested you for the Riverside Development Project. It's a major undertaking, affordable housing with sustainable design. Think you can handle it?" "Absolutely." The confidence in my voice surprised me. A week ago, I would have been tongue-tied. Now, after surviving Ryan and accepting Nathan's protection, a challenging project seemed manageable. I dove into work, losing myself in designs and specifications. Around me, my new colleagues chatted about their weekends, their lives, their normal concerns. I envied their simplicity, even as I was grateful for my own complicated reality. Lunch was a salad at my desk while I reviewed structural requirements. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "How's the first day?" "Good." "Overwhelming, but good. They're giving me actual responsibility." "Of course they are. You earned it." His faith in me was a warm weight in my chest, comforting and terrifying in equal measure. At 4 p.m., Patricia stopped by my desk. "Natalie, Mr. Morrison would like to see you in his office." My stomach dropped. Surely I hadn't done anything wrong already. I followed her down a hallway lined with awards and accolades to a corner office with panoramic city views. James Morrison was in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades at the top of his field. He stood as I entered, extending his hand with a warm smile. "Natalie, welcome to Morrison & Webb. Patricia tells me you've hit the ground running." "Thank you, sir. Everyone's been very welcoming." Good. He gestured for me to sit. "I wanted to personally thank you for joining us. Your thesis work on integrating sustainable design with affordable housing was exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need." He discussed the Riverside project for several minutes, his enthusiasm infectious. Then his expression grew more serious. "I also wanted to mention that we've had some unusual inquiries about you today. A man called claiming to be your fiancé, asking about your schedule and work address." Ice flooded my veins. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. We have strict privacy policies for all employees." Morrison's eyes were shrewd. "But I wanted you aware of it. If you have any concerns about your safety, we have security protocols in place." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I appreciate your discretion." My mind raced. Ryan was already trying to find ways to reach me. "The man who called isn't my fiancé. He's my ex-boyfriend, and there's a restraining order against him." Morrison nodded slowly. "I see. In that case, I'll alert building security to deny him access if he attempts to enter." "Your safety is important to us, Natalie. Don't hesitate to speak up if you need additional support." After the meeting, I immediately texted Nathan. "Ryan called my office asking about me. They didn't give him information, but he knows where I work." His response was instant. "Leaving my meeting now. I'll be there in 10 minutes. "Nathan, you don't need to. 10 minutes." I returned to my desk in a daze, trying to focus on blueprints while my mind spun with implications. How had Ryan gotten Morrison & Webb's number? Had he been following me? Were his friends more connected than Nathan had estimated? Patricia appeared at my desk. "Everything okay? You look pale." "Just a personal issue. Nothing to worry about." The lie came easily, a skill I'd developed during my relationship with Ryan. Smile and pretend. "Actually, I think I'm going to call it a day. Is that all right?" "Of course. First days are exhausting." She patted my shoulder kindly. "See you tomorrow." I gathered my things and headed for the elevator, hyper-aware of everyone around me. Was that man by the water cooler watching me too closely? Had that woman in the lobby been there when I arrived this morning? Nathan was waiting in the Bentley outside, his expression dark. He opened the door himself, and I slid inside gratefully. "Tell me everything," he said, once Dimitri had pulled into traffic. I recounted Morrison's warning, the phone call from Ryan claiming to be my fiancé. Nathan's jaw tightened with each sentence. He's escalating faster than expected. The message my men delivered should have made him back off. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Either he's more reckless than I thought, or someone's encouraging him to keep pushing. What does that mean? It means Ryan might not be acting alone anymore. His drug-dealing associates might see you as leverage, either to control him or to send a message to others who might cooperate with police. The idea that I'd become a pawn in some larger criminal game made my stomach churn. The detective wants to meet tomorrow. What if I tell her I can't testify? Would that make them leave me alone? No. Nathan's voice was firm. Once you're identified as a witness, backing out makes you look weak. Predators target weakness. So I'm trapped. You're protected. He took my hand, his grip warm and solid. Natalie, look at me. I met his dark eyes, seeing determination and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. I will not let anything happen to you. Do you understand? Whatever resources I need to deploy, whatever connections I need to leverage, you are safe. You can't promise that, I whispered. Your sister is exactly why I can promise it. His voice roughened. I failed Elena. I won't fail you. Back at the penthouse, Nathan made calls while I tried to decompress from my first day. Maria brought tea and sympathy, fussing over me like a worried mother. Mr. Cross, he is very protective, she said, arranging cookies on a plate I hadn't asked for. But he is good man. You trust him, yes? I do, I realized. Despite barely knowing him, despite the complications and the danger and the shadows in his past, I trusted Nathan Cross more than I'd trusted anyone in years. That evening, Nathan's business meeting was unavoidable. Alessandro arrived at 6, positioning himself in the living room with the casual alertness I'd come to recognize in Nathan's security team. You need anything, Miss Natalie, you just ask, he said in accented English. I tried to relax, to watch television or read, but my mind kept returning to Ryan, to the restraining order that meant nothing, to his friends who dealt drugs and clearly had resources I couldn't begin to match, to the detective who wanted my testimony tomorrow. Around 8, my phone rang. Sarah, finally. Okay, I've been patient long enough, she said without preamble. What the hell is going on? Your texts have been weird, you haven't called, and your neighbor said you moved out. I gave her an edited version. The bar, Ryan's attempt to drug me, Nathan's intervention, the new apartment in a secure building. I left out the parts about organized crime and protection details. Jesus, Natalie. Sarah's voice was thick with emotion. I should have been there. I should have come back from Boston immediately. You couldn't have known. And this Nathan guy, you're sure he's safe? You're living in his building, accepting his protection. That's a lot of power to give someone. He saved my life, Sarah. I know, and I'm grateful. But be careful. Men who seem too good to be true usually are. Her warning echoed in my mind long after we hung up. Was I being naive again? Trusting too easily? But Nathan had asked nothing from me, except to let him keep me safe. He'd never been inappropriate, never pushed boundaries, never made me feel like his protection came with strings attached. Around 10, I heard the elevator. Nathan was back, his tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. Everything okay here? He asked Alessandro. Quiet night, boss. After Alessandro left, Nathan poured himself a drink and collapsed onto the sofa with a heavy sigh. He looked exhausted, the strain of the day showing in the tight lines around his eyes. Rough meeting? I asked, sitting in the chair across from him. Complicated. He took a long sip of whiskey. Nothing for you to worry about. Your business or your other business? His lips twitched. I told you, everything I do is legitimate now. But you're using your connections to protect me. That makes it my business too. Nathan studied me over the rim of his glass. Do you really want to know? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment, then set down his drink. My family's connections extend throughout the city's power structure, legitimate and otherwise. When I need information, doors open. When I need people to understand consequences, messages get delivered. I don't traffic in drugs, violence, or exploitation. But I exist in the space between the legal world and the criminal one, and I use that position to protect people who fall through the cracks. People like me. People like you. Like Elena. His voice softened on her name. The system failed my sister. The police couldn't protect her. The courts moved too slowly, and by the time anyone paid attention, she was dead. I swore I'd never let that happen again to anyone in my sphere. How many others have you protected? Dozens, over the years. Women, mostly, but occasionally men trapped in impossible situations. I provide shelter, security, whatever they need to escape danger, and rebuild their lives. The scale of what he was describing staggered me. That must cost a fortune. I have a fortune. And Elena left me her life insurance, money she'd intended for the teaching degree she never got to pursue. I use it to fund the protection she never received. The raw honesty in his admission made my chest ache. This man, this complicated, dangerous, compassionate man, had turned his grief into action. Had created an entire shadow network dedicated to saving people the system ignored. You're extraordinary, I said quietly. Nathan laughed, bitter and sad. I'm damaged. I'm using resources most people don't have to assuage guilt over a sister I couldn't save. There's nothing extraordinary about that. I disagree. I moved to sit beside him on the sofa, close enough that our shoulders touched. You've saved lives, Nathan. Mine included. That matters. He turned to look at me, and in his eyes I saw hunger. Not just physical, though that was there too, but something deeper. The need to be seen, understood, forgiven for sins real and imagined. Natalie, he said, my name a caress and a warning. You should go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be a difficult day. I'm not tired. Neither am I. His voice dropped lower, but if you stay here, sitting this close, looking at me like that, I'm going to do something we might both regret. My heart hammered against my ribs. What if I wouldn't regret it? You don't know what you're saying. The adrenaline, the danger, the gratitude, they're confusing your feelings. Don't tell me what I feel. Heat rose in my voice. I'm not some fragile damsel you need to protect from herself. I know exactly what I'm feeling, Nathan. And what is that? That I trust you. That I feel safer with you than I've felt in years. That when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I never did with Ryan or anyone else. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. That I want you to kiss me, and not because I'm grateful or confused, but because I care about you. The air between us crackled with tension. Nathan's hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb tracing my lower lip with aching gentleness. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably. You're vulnerable. I'm supposed to be protecting you. You are protecting me. This doesn't change that. If I kiss you, Natalie, I won't want to stop. Then don't stop. He closed the distance between us, his lips claiming mine with barely restrained hunger. The kiss was nothing like Ryan's had been, demanding, selfish, controlling. Nathan kissed me like I was precious, like he was savoring something rare and irreplaceable. His hand tangled in my hair while the other pulled me closer, and I melted into him, my own hands fisting in his shirt. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against mine. "We shouldn't," he said, even as his arms tightened around me. "I know. The timing is terrible. I know. I'm too old for you, too complicated, too damaged. I know all of that." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "And I don't care." Something in his expression cracked, the careful control slipping to reveal naked want beneath. He stood abruptly, extending his hand. "Come with me." I let him lead me through the penthouse to the master bedroom, my heart racing with anticipation and nervousness. This was happening. I was choosing this, choosing him, despite every rational reason not to. Inside his room, Nathan pulled me close again, his kiss deeper this time, more urgent. His hands moved over me with reverent care, learning the shape of me through my clothes. When he started to unbutton my blouse, I didn't stop him. "Last chance to change your mind," he murmured against my neck. "I'm not changing my mind." What followed was tender and passionate, Nathan taking his time to learn what made me gasp, what made me arch into his touch. He worshipped my body with hands and mouth, patient and thorough until I was trembling with need. When he finally made love to me, it was with a reverence that made tears prick my eyes. This wasn't the desperate coupling of two people seeking escape. This was connection, genuine and deep. Two damaged people finding solace in each other. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with my head on his chest, I felt his heartbeat gradually slow. His fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder, soothing and hypnotic. "I should regret this," he said quietly, "but I don't. Neither do I. The timing is still terrible." "I know." I pressed a kiss to his chest. "But we can't choose when we meet the right people." Nathan was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "Is that what you think I am? The right person?" "I don't know yet, but I know I want to find out." He tightened his arms around me, and I felt him press a kiss to the top of my head. "Sleep, Natalie. Tomorrow we face the police, and whatever comes after." I drifted off in his arms, feeling safer and more cherished than I had in years. Tomorrow would bring complications and questions and potentially danger. But tonight, I had this. Nathan's warmth, his protection, and the beginning of something that felt like it might be real. Outside, the city stretched into darkness, full of dangers I couldn't see. But here, in Nathan Cross's arms, I finally felt like I'd found a place worth fighting for. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and Nathan's arm draped across my waist. For a moment, I simply lay there, processing the weight of what we'd done. The night before rushed back in a flood of sensation and emotion. His hands, his mouth, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious. Then reality crashed in. I'd slept with the man protecting me from my abusive ex-boyfriend. I'd complicated an already impossible situation by bringing intimacy into an equation that already included danger, gratitude, and unresolved trauma. Nathan stirred beside me, his dark eyes opening to find me watching him. For a long moment, we simply looked at each other, both perhaps wondering if the other regretted what had happened. "Good morning," he said finally, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning." I pulled the sheet higher, suddenly self-conscious in daylight. "I should probably—" "Don't!" His hand found mine beneath the covers. "Don't apologize or make excuses or try to take back what happened. We're both adults who made a choice. A complicated choice. All the best choices are." A slight smile curved his lips. "Are you sorry?" I considered lying, considered claiming confusion or weakness. But Nathan deserved honesty. "No. Are you?" "Never." He pulled me closer, dropping a kiss on my forehead. but we need to talk about what this means, what happens next. After the police interview, I said, practical concerns surfacing. Detective Morrison wants to see me at 10. Nathan nodded, releasing me reluctantly. I'll drive you. And Natalie? Whatever happens today, whatever they tell you about Ryan or his associates, remember that you're safe. My protection doesn't change because our relationship has. Our relationship. The words hung in the air between us. Undefined, but acknowledged. We'd crossed a line last night, and there was no going back. I showered in Nathan's bathroom, borrowing his robe while Maria mysteriously appeared with fresh clothes in my size, a professional skirt suit appropriate for a police interview. I didn't ask how she'd known I'd need them or why they were already here. Some questions were better left unasked. Over breakfast, Nathan briefed me on what to expect. Detective Morrison will want details about Ryan's assault attempt, but she'll also ask about his associates, his lifestyle, anything that might connect to their larger investigation. Answer truthfully, but don't speculate about things you don't know for certain. Will you come in with me? If you want me there. But Natalie, you should know that my presence might complicate things. The police know who I am, know about my family's history. If they think I'm influencing your testimony, I don't care what they think. My voice was firm. I want you there. Something warm flickered in his eyes. Then I'll be there. The police station was a utilitarian building in downtown, all concrete and fluorescent lighting. Detective Sarah Morrison met us in the lobby, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked at Nathan with clear recognition and something that might have been concern. Mr. Cross, I wasn't expecting you. Miss Harper requested I accompany her. I'm here as moral support, nothing more. Morrison's gaze moved to me, assessing. All right, but Mr. Cross, this is an official interview. Any interference? I understand the rules, Detective. She led us to an interview room that smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. A video camera was mounted in the corner, its red light blinking. Morrison sat across from me, a file folder thick with papers in front of her. Thank you for coming in, Miss Harper. I know this is difficult. She opened the folder, revealing photos I didn't want to see. Ryan's booking photo, crime scene images from other cases. Let's start with Thursday night. Tell me everything that happened at Meridian Bar. I recounted the story, my voice steadier than I expected. The celebration, Ryan's unwelcome arrival, the champagne glass I'd nearly drunk from. Nathan's warning, the revelation of the pills, Ryan's forced consumption of his own drugged drink. Morrison took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Then she pulled out more photos, men I didn't recognize, some in expensive suits, others in casual clothes that didn't hide the hardness in their eyes. Do you recognize any of these individuals? I studied each photo carefully. No. Ryan never introduced you to business associates? Never brought anyone to your apartment? He kept that part of his life separate, I thought. I trailed off, embarrassed by my own naivety. I thought he was just in pharmaceutical sales. He is, or was. Morrison leaned forward. But his client base extended beyond legitimate doctors. We've been tracking a prescription drug trafficking ring operating through pharmaceutical reps. Ryan Mitchell is a small player, but he has connections to higher levels of the operation. My stomach dropped. You're saying Ryan was dealing drugs? We're saying he had access to controlled substances and knew people who wanted them. When he lost his job 6 months ago for ethics violations, he apparently turned those connections into a new income stream. 6 months ago, around the time we'd broken up. Had I driven him to it? Or had the drugs always been there, hidden beneath the surface charm? Miss Harper, I need you to understand something. Morrison's voice was grave. The people Ryan associates with don't take kindly to witnesses. You coming forward, pressing charges, testifying. It makes you a target. I'm aware of that, I said quietly, feeling Nathan's presence solid beside me. Are you? Morrison's gaze flicked to Nathan. Because protection from the Cross family, while certainly effective, puts you in a complicated position. You'd be trading one dangerous association for another. Nathan's hand found mine under the table, his grip warm and steadying. Detective, with all due respect, comparing my family's legitimate business interests to drug traffickers is both inaccurate and insulting. Is it? Morrison pulled out another photo. Nathan and several men at what looked like a restaurant, heads bent together in conversation. Because these men you're photographed with have interesting criminal histories. I have dinner with many people, Detective. Some of them have past they're trying to leave behind. I help with that transition when possible. The tension in the room was palpable. Morrison clearly suspected Nathan of more than just legitimate business, but she had no proof. And I realized that this was Nathan's reality, existing in the gray area between legal and criminal, using connections he'd inherited to help people while staying just inside the lines. Miss Harper, I need to be direct with you. Morrison closed the folder. If you testify against Ryan Mitchell, we can offer you witness protection, a new identity, relocation, complete severance from your old life. The offer should have been tempting. A clean break, safety guaranteed by the government rather than a man with questionable connections. But it meant leaving Nathan, leaving my new job, leaving everything I just started building. And if I don't want witness protection? I asked. Then you'll be a witness without protection, aside from whatever Mr. Cross can provide. Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. The choice is yours, Miss Harper. But make it soon. Trial is set for 6 weeks from now. The interview lasted another hour, Morrison going through every detail of my relationship with Ryan, every incident I could remember that might prove a pattern of behavior. By the time we left, I was exhausted and shaken. In the Bentley, Nathan was quiet, his jaw tight with suppressed emotion. Finally, as Dimitri navigated through traffic, he spoke. You should take the witness protection. I turned to stare at him. What? It's the safest option. New identity. Distance from all of this. His voice was strained. From me. I'm not leaving. Natalie, you heard Morrison. These people are dangerous. I can provide security, but I can't give you what the government can. Complete anonymity. I don't want anonymity. I want my life. My job. I hesitated, then finished. You. I want you. Nathan's eyes closed briefly, pain and relief warring across his features. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you saved me when no one else would. I know you've spent years trying to atone for a sister you couldn't save by protecting everyone else you could. I know you made love to me last night like I was something precious. My voice dropped, and I know I'm not ready to walk away from whatever this is between us. I'm not a good man, Natalie. You're not a perfect man. There's a difference. He pulled me close then, heedless of Dimitri's presence, his face buried in my hair. If anything happens to you because of me, it won't. You won't let it. I pulled back to meet his eyes. Will you? Never. Back at the penthouse, Nathan made calls while I tried to process everything Morrison had revealed. Ryan wasn't just an abusive ex. He was a criminal with connections to people who wouldn't hesitate to silence a witness. And Nathan, my protector, moved in circles that made even the police wary. I'd gone from one dangerous man to another. Except Nathan's danger was pointed outward, a weapon wielded in defense rather than attack. And that made all the difference. Maria brought lunch that I couldn't eat, my stomach churning with anxiety about the trial, about Ryan's associates, about the impossible choice between safety and the life I wanted to build. You need to eat, Nathan said, appearing beside me on the sofa. Whatever happens, you need your strength. Morrison thinks I'm making a mistake, trusting you. Maybe you are. Do you think I am? He was quiet for a long moment. I think you deserve better than a man with blood on his family's hands. But I also think I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, regardless of what that costs me. What does that mean? Instead of answering, Nathan pulled me into his arms, and I felt the tension thrumming through him. Whatever he was planning, whatever measures he was preparing to take, they scared even him. That evening, Nathan had another unavoidable meeting. Before he left, he kissed me thoroughly, desperately, as if memorizing the taste of me. Alessandro will be here. Don't open the door for anyone. Don't leave the apartment. Promise me. Nathan, you're scaring me. You promise me, Natalie. I promise. After he left, the penthouse felt too large and too quiet. Alessandro positioned himself by the elevator, his presence both comforting and unsettling. I tried to distract myself with television, with work materials, with anything that would stop my mind from spinning through worst-case scenarios. Around 8, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but Alessandro nodded for me to pick up. Hello? Natalie Harper? A man's voice, unfamiliar and cold. Who is this? A friend of Ryan's. He asked me to give you a message. The voice was calm, almost pleasant, which made it more terrifying. Drop the charges. Tell the police you were mistaken. Do this, and Ryan leaves you alone. Don't do this, and we'll have to have a conversation about consequences. I'm not dropping the charges. Then you're making a very poor choice, Miss Harper. Nathan Cross can't protect you every minute. Eventually, you'll be alone. And when you are, we'll be there. The line went dead. Alessandro was already on his phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. I sat frozen, the reality of my situation finally, fully sinking in. These weren't idle threats. These were promises from men who made people disappear. Miss Natalie, we're locking down the building, Alessandro said. Mr. Cross is on his way back. They're going to kill me, I whispered. Aren't they? They're going to try. Alessandro's voice was grim. But Mr. Cross, he won't let them. Nathan arrived 20 minutes later, his expression thunderous. He pulled me into his arms the moment he saw me, his embrace almost painful in its intensity. Tell me exactly what was said. I recounted the conversation word for word. Nathan's jaw tightened with each sentence, and by the time I finished, something dangerous had settled in his eyes. They've made their move. Now I make mine. He looked at Alessandro. Full security protocol. No one in or out without my approval. And call Marco. I need the information we gathered on Ryan's associates. All of it. What are you going to do? I asked. Nathan cupped my face, his touch gentle despite the fury I saw in his expression. I'm going to ensure they understand that threatening you was the worst mistake they ever made. Nathan, please, don't do anything that will what? Put me in danger. His laugh was bitter. Natalie, I've been in danger my entire life. It's what men like me understand. And these people? They're about to learn that some threats aren't worth making. He kissed me then, hard and possessive, a claim and a promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with determination. Stay here, trust me, and know that whatever I have to do to keep you safe, I'll do it without hesitation or regret. As he left with Alessandro, I heard him speaking in rapid Italian on his phone, his voice cold and commanding. This was Nathan in his element. Not the gentle man who'd made love to me, but the heir to a family with connections throughout the city's dark underbelly. And watching him go, I realized that I'd fallen completely for a man who existed in shadows, a man who would kill to protect me if necessary, a man whose love was fierce and possessive and possibly the most dangerous thing I'd ever accepted. But I'd made my choice. For better or worse, I was Nathan Cross's, and he was mine. Now we just had to survive the consequences. The hours after Nathan left were the longest of my life. I paced the penthouse, unable to sit still, unable to focus on anything except the knowledge that somewhere in the city, Nathan was confronting dangerous men on my behalf. Maria arrived around 10, her usual warm demeanor replaced with somber concern. "You should rest, Miss Natalie," she said, bringing tea I didn't want. "Mr. Cross, he know what he's doing." "Does he? Or is he going to get himself killed protecting me?" Maria's expression softened. "He protect many people over the years. Always he come back safe. This time is no different." But it felt different. This time it was personal. This time Nathan wasn't just fulfilling a vow to his dead sister. He was fighting for someone he cared about. Someone who'd complicated his careful existence by sleeping with him and refusing witness protection. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "It's handled. Home soon." I wanted to feel relief, but the vagueness of handled terrified me. What had he done? Who had he hurt? What lines had he crossed on my behalf? When Nathan finally walked through the door at 1 a.m., he looked exhausted, but unharmed. His suit was rumpled, his tie missing, but there was no blood, no obvious signs of violence. He crossed to me immediately, pulling me into his arms. "It's over," he murmured against my hair. "Ryan's associates won't be contacting you again. What did you do?" "What was necessary?" His voice was firm. "They understand now that you're untouchable, that the cost of harming you exceeds any benefit of silencing you. Nathan, please, I need to know." He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. "I had a conversation with the people at the top of their organization. I explained that you're under my protection, and that I take threats very personally. I also provided information about their operations that I shouldn't legally have access to, making it clear that if anything happens to you, that information goes to federal authorities." His jaw tightened. "And I reminded them that my family has been in this city for 3 generations, that we have roots they don't, that we can make them disappear far more easily than they can make you disappear. So you threatened them." "I promised them consequences. There's a difference." I should have been horrified, should have been appalled by his casual discussion of making people disappear. But all I felt was grateful that someone with power had finally chosen to wield it in my defense. "What about Ryan?" "He's a coward who'll testify against his associates in exchange for a reduced sentence. The police will get their prosecution, and Ryan will spend the next 5 years in federal prison." Nathan's smile was cold. "I arranged that too." The exhaustion of the day finally crashed over me. I sagged against him, and Nathan swept me into his arms, carrying me to his bedroom. "Sleep," he commanded gently. "Everything else can wait until morning." I woke to Nathan's phone ringing. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the clock read 9:47 a.m. Nathan reached for the phone on his nightstand, his voice rough with sleep. "What is it?" I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Nathan's expression grew serious. "When? And Morrison knows? All right, I'll tell her." He ended the call and turned to me, his hand finding mine. "That was Marco. Ryan attempted suicide in his cell this morning. He's alive, but he's been hospitalized. The news should have affected me more. This was the man I'd once loved, once planned a future with, but all I felt was a distant pity for the broken person he'd become. Does this change anything? For the case? It might delay the trial, but not stop it. Ryan's associates are already cooperating thanks to the information I provided. The prosecutor has enough without Ryan's testimony if needed. Nathan pulled me close. "You're safe, Natalie. Truly safe. This is over." The words didn't feel real. After weeks of fear, of looking over my shoulder, of accepting protection and complications and impossible choices, it was simply Over? What happens now? I asked. Now you live your life. Go to work, design buildings, become the architect you were always meant to be. His voice softened. And if you want, you do that with me beside you. I pulled back to meet his eyes. Is that what you want? I want you to have a choice. Real choice, not one made under duress or fear. Nathan's expression was vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. I'm not an easy man to be with, Natalie. My family's history will always complicate things. There will always be people who judge you for being associated with me. I don't care what other people think. You should. Your career, your reputation, are my concern, not theirs. I cupped his face, feeling the morning stubble rough against my palms. Nathan, I'm not naive anymore. I know what you are, what your family is, and I'm choosing you anyway. Something fierce and tender filled his eyes. Why? Because you see me. Not the naive girl who chose the wrong man, not the victim who needs saving, but me. Natalie Harper, architect, survivor, woman complicated enough to love a man who exists in shadows. I smiled slightly. Because you saved me, yes, but also because you let me save you too. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving, Nathan. Even men who spend their lives saving others. He kissed me then, slow and deep, a claiming and a surrender. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against mine. Move in with me. Not the apartment downstairs. Here. With me. That's moving fast. We've known each other less than 2 weeks, and I've already threatened organized crime on your behalf and shown you the darkest parts of my world. His slight smile was self-deprecating. I think we're past moving slow. He was right. Our relationship had been forged in crisis and danger, compressed into an intensity that normal courtships never reached. We'd seen each other at our worst and most vulnerable. Pretending we needed to take things slowly seemed absurd. Okay, I said. I'll move in. Nathan's smile transformed his face, and I realized how rarely I saw him genuinely happy. Good, because I'm not letting you go, Natalie Harper. Not now, not ever. The next few weeks passed in a blur of settling into our new normal. I worked at Morrison & Webb, throwing myself into the Riverside Development Project with an enthusiasm that earned Patricia's approval and Mr. Morrison's praise. My colleagues knew nothing of my past, my ex-boyfriend, or the dangerous man I now lived with. I was simply Natalie, talented architect, slightly mysterious about her personal life. Nathan and I fell into a rhythm that felt surprisingly domestic, despite his complicated business dealings. Mornings making coffee together, evenings discussing our days, nights wrapped in each other's arms. He showed me more of his world, the legitimate charity work his family funded, the people he'd helped escape dangerous situations, the careful balance he maintained between light and shadow. I met his associates, men with hard eyes and careful manners who treated me with respect because I was Nathan's. I attended functions at his side, society events where people whispered about the Cross family, but smiled to our faces. I learned to navigate his world with the same determination I'd brought to my architecture career. Ryan's trial happened in my absence. I wasn't needed to testify after all. He received 8 years for drug trafficking and attempted assault, reduced from what it could have been in exchange for his cooperation. I felt nothing when I heard the news except relief that it was finally, truly over. 3 months after that first night in Meridian Bar, Nathan took me back to the place where we'd met. The same bartender with silver-streaked hair smiled in recognition as we entered. Back to celebrate something else? She asked warmly. Something like that, Nathan replied, guiding me to a quiet booth rather than the bar itself. The restaurant was busy with its Thursday evening crowd, business types and couples, the low hum of conversation and clinking glasses creating a familiar ambiance. Nathan ordered champagne. The good kind, he specified. and took my hand across the table. "I want you to know something," he began. "Before I met you, I existed. I went through motions, fulfilled obligations, protected people out of guilt and duty. But I wasn't truly living. Nathan." "Let me finish." His grip on my hand tightened. "You changed that. You came into my life terrified and vulnerable, and somehow you found the strength not just to survive but to choose hope. To choose me, despite knowing what that meant." His voice roughened. "You saved me, Natalie, from a half-life of penance and guilt. You made me want more than just atonement." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. My breath caught as he opened it to reveal a ring. Not ostentatious, but elegant, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the light and scattered it like stars. I'm not a perfect man. I'll never be the safe choice or the easy choice. But I love you with everything I am, everything I have. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you were right to take a chance on a man who operates in shadows. He slid from the booth to kneel beside the table, seemingly oblivious to the attention we were drawing from nearby diners. "Natalie Harper, will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I looked at this man, dangerous and protective, complicated and devoted, mine. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, absolutely, yes." The restaurant erupted in applause as Nathan slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for me. Which, knowing Nathan, it probably had been. He pulled me from the booth into his arms, kissing me thoroughly while strangers cheered, and the bartender who'd seen our first meeting beamed with maternal approval. When we finally broke apart, Nathan's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Thank you," he murmured, "for trusting me, for choosing me, for being brave enough to love a man like me." "Thank you for saving me," I replied, "and for letting me save you back." We stayed at Meridian Bar for hours, celebrating the beginning we'd found in this exact spot months ago. The place where I'd come alone to celebrate a new job had become the place where I'd found something far more precious. A love forged in danger, tested by fear, and strong enough to survive whatever shadows the future might bring. As we left that night, Nathan's arm around my waist and the ring heavy on my finger, I caught our reflection in the restaurant's windows. We looked like any other couple, happy, in love, building a future together. And in many ways, we were. But we were also more than that. We were two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment, who'd chosen hope over fear, love over safety. We were living proof that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the right one. And as Nathan pulled me close in the back of the Bentley, whispering promises against my hair while the city lights blurred past, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. Not the easy one, not the safe one, but mine. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, I stood in the same bar wearing a simple white dress, surrounded by a small group of people who'd become family. Sarah was there, having finally made peace with my choices after meeting Nathan and seeing how he treated me. Maria wept happy tears, while Alessandro and Marco stood as Nathan's groomsmen, looking uncomfortable in tuxedos, but genuinely pleased. The ceremony was intimate, officiated by a judge who owed Nathan's family a favor, but performed the service with genuine warmth. When Nathan slid the wedding band onto my finger beside the engagement ring, his hands were steady, even though his voice wavered slightly. "I promise to protect you, cherish you, and love you for all the days of my life. To be your safe harbor in every storm. To never take for granted the gift of your trust. I promise to stand beside you," I replied, tears streaming down my face, in light and shadow, in safety and danger, for all the days of my life. To see you as you are and love you more each day. "You may kiss your bride," the judge said with a smile. And Nathan did, thoroughly, while our small gathering applauded, and the bartender who'd witnessed our beginning raised a glass in toast to our future. Later, at the celebration dinner in a private room at Meridian Bar, I looked around at the life we'd built from impossible circumstances, at the man who'd saved me and who I'd saved in return, at the friends and found family who'd supported us through crisis and beyond. Nathan caught me watching him and crossed to my side, pulling me close. "What are you thinking?" That a year ago, I came to this bar alone to celebrate a new job. I had no idea my life was about to change completely. Regret any of it? I looked up at him, my husband, my protector, my love, and smiled. Not a single moment. Good. He kissed my forehead gently. Because this is only the beginning, Mrs. Cross. We have a lifetime ahead of us. And we did. A lifetime of balancing light and shadow, of building a future from a past neither of us could change. A lifetime of loving a man who existed in gray areas, but who'd shown me that sometimes the most complicated people are also the most worth loving. As we danced to music, played by a small string quartet, I rested my head against Nathan's chest and felt his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. This was home, not the penthouse, not any physical place, but here in his arms, safe, cherished, loved. And for a woman who'd once been so vulnerable, so alone, that was everything. The song ended, and Nathan pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. In them, I saw the future stretching before us. Challenges, certainly. Complications from his world and mine. But also love, partnership, and the certainty that whatever came, we'd face it together. "I love you," I said simply. "I love you too," he replied. "Always." And in a bar in the heart of the city, in the place where our story began with danger and fear, we celebrated the love that had grown from those dark roots into something beautiful, strong, and enduring. Sometimes, I learned, the best love stories begin with a toast to danger and end with a promise of forever. And mine, ours, was proof that even in the deepest shadows, light can flourish. All it takes is someone brave